Okay, so I think it's when you guys are in high school and you're thinking about going to art college, I think it's a really exciting time in your life, and something really cool to think about is how art is really interconnected into everything. When you're thinking about going to art college and what an artist does, it's really interesting to think about because art is connected into a lot of different stuff, whether it's an app that you're using on your phone, or a movie that you see in a theater, or the clothing that you guys put on in the morning, or the architecture of any building, or of course like a painting in a museum. So all of these things that you experience on a daily basis have somehow been informed by an artist before you come into contact with them. And I think that's a really interesting way to think about what a contemporary artist does. So to kind of talk about all the different types of art, we're going to start off by taking a look at our campus and then moving inside of the buildings and then talking about the programs. So one of my favorite buildings on campus, you can see in the lower left-hand corner, MICA has this 5-story warehouse that is only studio and gallery space. So when I was a junior and a senior at MICA, I had a space in here. It's really fabulous. Also on the left-hand side, you can see the inside of the main building. It's completely made of marble. We actually opened, MICA started in 1826, and we're the oldest fully accredited 4-year art college in the country, which is pretty awesome. This was used to be a train station, and now it has our sculpture and our fashion and our fiber department inside. And then you guys can see in the upper left-hand corner, that's one of our dorms that we opened in 2009, which I think is really cool because that vertical space in the middle that says MICA is all studio space. So if you live in here, you'll have a studio at the end of your hall. So every single building on campus has gallery space. When you come and visit, you'll see students' artwork that's up everywhere. And our campus is in a neighborhood. So even though we're in Baltimore City, we have this kind of really quaint East Coast, like Victorian neighborhood where all of our buildings are. So in terms of the community, MICA has around 2,000 students, which is a fabulous East Coast city. This is a picture of our downtown area that's called the Inner Harbor. And I really loved being a student in Baltimore because there were a lot of really interesting resources. Okay, so we are in Baltimore, and I think one of the coolest things when I was growing up and when I was in high school, I never really thought about Baltimore. It wasn't a city that was really on my radar, but moving there was really cool because it was so affordable compared to a lot of the other East Coast cities, and it has this kind of DIY or like do-it-yourself attitude. So a lot of our students were making their own gallery spaces, they were curating their own shows, hanging their own exhibitions, and that kind of filters into the music scene as well. We have a huge arts and music festival right on our campus every summer. So it's a really great place to be able to not just exist as a student, but kind of jump into the community and be a part of that, which was really exciting for me. It was so welcoming. So like we kind of talked about before, Baltimore is right in the middle of the East Coast Art Corridor. And this was really great because I remember when I was a first-year student, my drawing teacher said, you know, we're going to draw for the first half of class, and then for the afternoon portion, we're just going to take the train to DC and go to the Smithsonian for the afternoon. So all of these opportunities kind of opened up to me up and down the East Coast. And I'm also going to show you guys some of our recent alumni and how they kind of took advantage of those opportunities and how they're impacting their careers. So the first alumni we're going to look at is Abby. She graduated in 2006 from our video major, and when she moved to New York afterwards, she began taking acting classes and then eventually started a web series online that was called Broad City, and it became super popular. You guys can see in the upper right-hand corner, Amy Poehler saw their show and thought it was so funny, so she actually produced it into a show that's on Comedy Central, and it's starting their second season in January. So an example of someone who works with big name clients, he was an illustration major at MICA, but had a concentration in experimental fashion. So he was kind of interested in both. And afterwards, he started doing weekly illustrations for a column in the New York Times, which were noticed by a design house in Italy called Marni, and they asked him to collaborate on their spring line a couple years ago. You can see his illustrations are featured on their tote bags and also their sweaters. So some of our alumni will graduate and they become entrepreneurs. They'll start their own companies, and yeah, Nolan and Bruce are a great example of that. They have a graphic design firm in Baltimore called Post Typography. So they specialize in using text as both a readable text and then also as an image. So you can see they've designed covers of Time magazine, ESPN magazine, and worked with countless musicians for their printed materials. Her own company, which is called Flat Vernacular. They have showrooms in 8 different countries around the world, and they've been profiled in so many different magazines. And I think the coolest part, you guys can see in the upper left-hand corner, her senior thesis at MICA was making kind of these Baroque symmetrical mandalas out of scrapbooking stickers. So it's like the stickers that you could collect, and then she makes these patterns with them. And that pattern was actually turned into the inside book jackets of Lena Dunham's new book that comes out, I think it came out a couple days ago or the end of September. Some of our alumni will go on to work for big name companies that you guys will totally recognize. Javier graduated from our illustration major, and he is now a production illustrator. So he actually works on set of movies and TV shows, helping a director's vision turn into a drawing and then eventually turn into what they're filming. So an example on the bottom, this is from the show Boardwalk Empire. Are you guys familiar with that? I don't know if you have it over here. It's on HBO in the States. So Javier works on this show, and the director will say, you know, I really want this scene to look like this. So Javier will make a drawing of that, and then the location, or the set directors can scout locations, get all of the props, and kind of make that vision come to life. Jeremy was in our animation department, and he currently works with Pixar, and he is a technical director. So he gets scripts and he reads them, and then he comes up with what the characters are physically going to look like, what their body movements and their quirks and their personalities will be. 2006 from our painting major. He went directly to Yale University to earn his MFA in painting. He's currently a professor of art at Vassar College, and he sells his artwork, or he has a gallery in both the United States and also Berlin, Germany. And another example of that, probably our most well-known alumni, is Jeff Koons. He graduated from MICA in the 70s, and he's a world-famous conceptual artist. Do you guys know his work? Have you seen it before? He's shown like all over the world, so that's kind of exciting. So some of these alumni I've shown you are really famous. Some of them are well-known in smaller areas, but I think one of the things to think about, it's kind of exciting, is that they literally all got started in a high school art program exactly like you are. So it's kind of like a humbling way to think about it. So the way that MICA takes a high school artist and prepares you to be a real-world artist starts off with our foundation program. So every single student on campus, no matter what you're interested in majoring in, has their first year set up as a foundation year. So you take these discipline-based studio classes, which are 6 hours long. So these meet Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we give you 2 academic classes. In the morning, you'll be in the interdisciplinary department, and in the afternoon, you'll be in the liberal arts department. So you have classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You always have a 3-day weekend because you have a lot of homework. Your first year, we also give you an elective. So if you wanted to get a start on something like graphic design or illustration or fiber, you can also kind of jump into those majors even in your first year. So the first year, the foundation program is kind of set up to broaden your skill set. Even if you know you want to be a graphic designer, you're still going to learn how to paint and how to kind of transform all of those different ideas into different media. So you broaden your skill set before you bring it home to your chosen major. So I'm going to show you some student artwork from each of our majors, starting with the fine arts. And you can see in this bubble there are 5 majors. Painting is definitely the largest of the fine art department. Our program, this was the first program at MICA, and we're kind of known as, I think, one of the really big painting programs in the US. There's no one type of painting. There's figurative work that's traditional, but there's also a lot of abstract and mixed media in this department as well. We're one of the only art schools in the US to offer drawing as its own major. It's definitely the basis of every art form, but it's totally a major all by itself. A lot of students will take their drawing skills and put them through a process. You can major in printmaking. We also have a concentration in book arts, where our students are hand-making paper and then binding their own books. Our fiber department was named one of the top 2 programs of its kind in the country, and it's very conceptual and sculptural. For instance, you can see this girl on the left who took a digital photo and then printed it out life-size on our fabric printer and then curled up into the bed that she had made. So it was more of a performance and installation piece. But within fiber, you will find a lot of students who are focusing on textile design and experimental fashion. And the last fine arts major is ceramics, which kind of focuses on the clay as the medium for installation and storytelling. So this next square is definitely the largest on campus. Illustration and graphic design are within our top 3 majors, and a lot of students are constantly going back and forth. They're overlapping. It's really common to have a student who is majoring in illustration and has a concentration in graphic design, or vice versa. So the thing that kind of makes these majors unique is that we actually bring clients into our classroom. So when a student is presented with a homework assignment, it usually has a real world budget, deadline. They're working with an art director. So at the end of the assignment, they're actually sometimes publishing their work, and they're able to build their resume and their portfolio with these real world projects before they leave. The third major here is architectural design, which is a really interesting program because you're focusing on architecture, but it's from a fine art basis because you're still getting a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Architectural Design. So many of these students will go on to get their MArch, so it's their Master's in Architecture. I think one of the coolest things about this program is that the students are actually going out into the community and they're interviewing people so that when they're sketching out a building, there's a conversation that is usually informing what their artwork is visually looking like. So with the next section, we have media arts. Photography at MICA has black and white as well as color process darkrooms, and then of course the digital labs and alternative processes as well. It's very loud. So this next major is video and film arts. And we're watching a piece that was made, this was made in a summer study abroad program, I think 2 summers ago. You guys can see it's more narrative, it's telling you a story. But video and film arts at MICA can pretty much be defined by anything that's a moving image. So you'll see a lot of experiments and kind of cross-genre work as well. The next major here is animation. And our students here are actually starting off totally hand-drawn. Then they move into 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional digital animation. So they kind of learn a little bit of how to do everything, and then they can go into the section that they're most interested in. The last major here is called Interaction, Design, and Art. And these students are using a digital platform to make interactive artwork. So interactive websites, phone apps, robotics, and even kinetic works of art. And the last piece I'm going to show you guys, I think this is really cool because the student who made this was actually a painting major who had a concentration in animation. So for his senior thesis, he handmade all of these puppets, and then he made this animation about this frog that's trying to eat all of these crickets and small bugs, and they're trying to get revenge on him. It's pretty cool. And he used his mouth to make a lot of the sound effects, which I think is cool. All right. So even though MICA is a very interdisciplinary school, the next two majors are really broader than any one specific medium. So in sculpture, for example, our students are starting off with this technical skill. They're learning how to work with wood, metal, casting, pouring, mold making, and then once they have those skills, they can choose to use them or not use them in any way that they want. So you'll see a lot of students dealing with performance, installation, and found objects. Sometimes they're not even creating these objects, but they're finding them and they're installing them in a very specific way. The same is true in the major that's called General Fine Arts. You'll find students who are working with a lot of different materials, but they have their own set of faculty members and their own visiting artists that they meet with on a weekly basis. So it's really broad, but it's also very specific to the curriculum that they're pursuing. So the top 4 squares that we looked at are all in art history, theory, and criticism, or a BFA in humanistic studies, which we usually just called humanities, and that's integrated with one of the other majors that we just went through. So for instance, a student in the humanities major could be focusing on political science and how they're pairing that with painting, or they could be focusing on literature and writing and graphic design. So it's kind of like you're double majoring, but it's only going to take you 4 years to do it. The very last major we have on campus is arts education. So these are for a student who's interested in teaching K through 12 when they graduate. We actually take your master's degree and we integrate it with your BFA. So in 5 years, you're going to graduate with 2 degrees. Just super. So you will notice that a lot of the students on our campus, they have these really individual stories. We're not a school that's just sending all of our alumni to work for one company, but we're really excited about the fact that our students can pick and choose what's available to them and kind of customize what they're doing in school for what they want to do afterwards. So for example, everyone on campus picks a major that's on the left-hand side. So if you guys just want to pick one out that is sticking out to you, then these 3 squares afterwards are totally optional. So for example, I majored in painting. I had a studio concentration in book arts. I had a liberal arts minor in art history. And outside of MICA, I had 3 internships before I graduated. So to show you guys 2 other examples of that, we recently had a student who was in the illustration department. He also had a studio concentration in game arts. He spent a semester studying abroad in Tokyo, and then after his junior year, he had an internship in Baltimore at Firaxis Games, which is one of the largest gaming companies on the East Coast. They hired him back full-time when he graduated, and he's currently one of their lead concept artists. And the second example I'll show you is a student who majored in graphic design. She also had a liberal arts minor in creative writing. And I think it was after her junior year, she had an internship in New York with Martha Stewart Weddings. And then her senior year, she took classes off campus at the University of Baltimore in business management, which I think really helped her kind of start her own business right after school as a graphic designer. She has an agency in Baltimore. So as you guys can tell, art is totally in demand. There are so many different opportunities for artists. And I think that being creative is the key. I think creativity is why artists are kind of labeled as the wild, kind of crazy ones, because you have these insane ideas. And our goal at MICA is to be able to take your creativity and harvest it in a way that's going to make you really competitive for jobs once you leave school. So on campus, we have a center. It's called the Center for Career Development. It's available to you the very first day that you step on campus, and then it's never not available to you. You could call back 10 years later and ask them a question. I think the biggest thing that they do for our students is keep a database and network of every company that we have alumni working with. So these are companies where students have landed internships or jobs in the past 5 years. You can see they're not just in Baltimore or the East Coast, but some of them are on the West Coast, some of them are abroad. It's a really great alumni network that we have working for us. Some of our students will realize that art is not just something that they're going to school for, but it's really one of the only universal ways to communicate. So a lot of students will study abroad. We have tons of programs. You can go for a semester during your junior or senior year, or we have 9 different summer programs for you guys to choose from. So some of our students will do that, and then they'll want to do more. Trevor, for example, studied abroad in Copenhagen as a student, and then after MICA, he applied for a Fulbright fellowship, and he spent a year in Hungary 2 years ago. MICA is actually the top producer of Fulbright scholars out of any art school. So last year we had 2 students who won it. Rita won it a couple years ago, and she spent a year in Colombia. She was in our painting department. So the very last thing I'm going to show you is a little bit more about what life is like on our campus. I think this is really important, especially for international students, if you've never been to Baltimore before, to kind of know what's waiting for you. I had a really fabulous time coming to MICA because when I was in high school, I was one of maybe 5 serious art students, and then I got to MICA and I was suddenly one of 2,000 very serious art students. So it's kind of a really great way to find this community. So all of the dorms that we have are set up apartment style. So you'll share a living room, a bathroom, and a kitchen with 2 or 3 other people at the very most. So it's not like 50 people all going to the bathroom at 8 a.m. at the same time. It's like very different from that. All of our first year students live in the Founders Green, which we just doubled in size last year. So it's really great because you guys all get to live together and build that community as new students in the first year. And then in your second year, which you can live on campus both first and second year, you'll be in the Meyerhoff house, which you can see this guy who's painting in his bedroom. We give you this wall in your room that you can do whatever you want to. So you can turn it into a painting studio. His bed actually folds up into the wall behind him. Or some students will keep it nice and neat. You can do whatever you want. There's a huge cafeteria. There's tons of cafes in the city. We have a fitness center. Lots of activities. This is from our Halloween party. There's also a fashion show every spring. It's a really good time to visit. Tons of clubs, lots of things to do. And then if you guys ever need more info about MICA, you can visit our website, which is mica.edu. We also have a Facebook group, which is a good way for you to ask questions if you can't just call up. National Portfolio Day. We have one in Baltimore in November, but there's also one this weekend that I hope you guys are coming to. We have an open house in the spring, and then campus tours twice a day, Monday through Friday. So if you come visit, we don't have anything on the weekend, so you want to come during the week. If you're a junior, if you're in grade 11, we have a pre-college summer program on our campus where you can actually take classes with our teachers. You live in our dorms, and it's a really great way to build your portfolio before you're in grade 12 and it's time to apply. So our application deadline is February 1st, and that's the same for scholarship. You actually get scholarship money through your application and your portfolio, so that's why they're linked together. On the right-hand side, you can see the requirements. Your portfolio of artwork is definitely the biggest and most important part, but we also want you guys to be writing essays. We need a copy of your transcript, letters of recommendation, and then for a lot of the international students that I've been meeting, we really need you guys to take the TOEFL or the IELTS test. So what we want to see in terms of that, if you're taking the IELTS, we need to see at least a 6.5, and with the TOEFL, we want to see at least an 80. So yeah, and then you can see over here on the left, you have to meet the minimum scores, and then every summer we actually have all of our international students come to MICA 3 weeks early, and it's kind of this program where you get acquainted with being in the US, being in Baltimore, and kind of, it's a great chance to kind of build that community before everyone else gets there, before school starts. So I hope that that was interesting for you guys and not too long. Sorry about my technical difficulty. But yeah, if you have questions, I would love to answer them, or if there's something you want me to talk about a little bit more. Is everyone sleeping, or was that kind of cool?
질문 이제 자유롭게 하시면 될 것 같아요.
Great. Well, thanks for, yeah. Yeah, the scholarship money. So as an international student, it's a little bit tricky for you guys because you're not eligible for financial aid. That's only for the US students. So for you, the scholarship money comes in two different ways. Based off of your portfolio, how strong your artwork is, or based off of your performance academically. So your GPA, your scores and your grades in high school, and then also if you've taken the TOEFL and if you're taking the SAT as well. So our students who are earning the top scholarship money are having a combination of both. So they're earning it for their portfolio and their academics, and that's why they're getting the most. But there's two ways, so that's pretty great. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you show us some of your artwork?
Of my artwork? I don't know. Maybe I will leave my website on a piece of paper and you can look at it later. Cool. Well, thank you guys for being a superb audience.
다른 질문하실 거 없으세요? What would you say is kind of like a strong major now in MICA? Because if it was painting before, what would be like strongest major now?
Well, I think one of the programs that's really taken off since I've been a student, it's weird because you can't rank undergrad programs in the US, so a lot of the rankings are based off of the grad programs, and our graphic design program is ranked the 3rd in the country right now, which I think totally impacts the way that the undergrad program is run. So I think if a student's interested in fine art, painting is the way to go, but I think if you're interested in anything on the computer, it's illustration and graphic design. I think those are some of the best programs at our school right now. Yeah. We have this really cool, the head of our graphic design department is Ellen Lepton, who went to Cooper. She is a director at the Cooper Hewitt in Manhattan. And I took her class as an undergrad student, and she publishes a book every 2 years. And so you use her book as your textbook. And it's all of the assignments she gives out in class, she records all of the homework. So you're kind of looking at this history of MICA graphic design in her books, and it's really interesting. I think it just impacts that whole community. It's really great. Yeah.
다른 질문 또 없으세요?